All right, so let me give you a little bit of tea. Make sure my man not listening. Let me tell you about the man I probably would have dated if the universe had simply just stopped being messy for 5 fucking minutes. Because if you know me and you know my channel, I have plenty of stories about my nightlife experience, and there was a character involved who I promised that we weren't gonna talk about in 2026. But when I was working at a bunny bar in Japan, I had a manager who was handsome, funny, proactive, and I'm not gonna lie, there was definitely some chemistry there. The problem is I had a boyfriend, and not just any boyfriend, but the boy was crazy, okay? If you watch the Crazy Stories series, you know exactly who this is, and we don't talk about him or bring up his name in 2026, okay? So while I'm over here trying to survive in the worst relationship of my life, I somehow developed a little workplace crush on my manager. And funniest part, by the time I finally became single, he disappeared. Like, literally disappeared. So let me tell you what happened. What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Celestial Lemonade. If you're new here, my name is Celeste, and on this channel, I talk about my experiences living abroad, dating, nightlife, culture, and all the random shit that comes with being a Black woman in Japan. So today we're having a little tea time, story time. So to understand this story, we have to go back to when I was working at the Bunny Bar in Japan. Now, a few of you already know this story, but if you've never heard of a Bunny Bar, basically it's a type of nightlife establishment where the women working there dressed in bunny outfits entertain customers, specifically men, talk to them and drink with them, and create the hostess style atmosphere. And working there was just lovely. You meet all kinds of people and you see ridiculous stuff. You see some ridiculous stuff, all right? I'm gonna leave it there. And because you're working with the same people constantly, you also become really close with your coworkers. And that is where he comes in, my manager. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and act like this man was like, you know, a Japanese Michael B. Jordan or Damson Idris, okay? Like, that's more of like my jam, but you know, sometimes, you know, you develop crushes on people who just are not your type because of their personality, you know? And that's basically what happened. He was objectively handsome. Sorry, I'm allowed to have eyes, and we're talking about like 3-4 years ago at this point. All right. And more importantly, he was so funny, like genuinely funny. He made, like, on my bad days, especially like if I had like really bad arguments like with my ex, like he would just like clear up my day. Like, he would make me forget about the shit. That's literally like how funny and fun he was. I'm saying was, I mean, possibly he's still alive, but we'll get to that. We basically had that bond where we could literally just joke about anything with each other. He'd tease me, I tease him. We laugh at like stupid shit at work. There was just this really comfortable energy between us. And I really didn't think much of it at first. I really thought like, oh yeah, like my manager, like he's just really cool. He's young, you know, he understands me. And because again, you know, I had a boyfriend. So in my head, this man was just simply my manager. My attractive, funny manager who happened to make work a little bit more enjoyable. That's it, right? As my relationship was declining, you know, I started to notice some more things, you know, the attraction level towards him started to rise. But, you know, of course, there was the one tiny problem. My relationship was getting bad, like bad. Now, this was the same relationship that I talked about in past videos, and I eventually realized, okay, I gotta get the fuck out of this. And because my manager worked with me, he knew some of the things that I was going through, even unexpectedly met the ex-boyfriend. And that is another thing that I talked about, and I talked about how that went down. But anyways, because we worked so close together, he knew some of these things, and there was some days where he could clearly see that I wasn't okay because I wasn't being my normal, like, cheerful, bubbly self, I guess you could say. And this is where I started to see him differently, because he wasn't just joking around with me anymore. He was actually checking in on me, asking if I was okay. He'd listen even when I was frustrated, which I feel like that's kind of like rare for Japanese men too. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, in my experience, I feel like that's rare. And sometimes after work, he'd even ride home with me. Of course, we'd been drinking alcohol, so in a taxi, of course. And he would go his separate way. Nothing ever happened between us, just to clear that. So nothing inappropriate was happening. We weren't sneaking around. We weren't hooking up. There was no secret relationship, but there was definitely this little something, and I could feel it. And those rides home were probably some of the moments where I noticed it the most, because work would be over, everybody would go their separate ways, and somehow we just end up talking, laughing, and just hanging out. And when you're already in a terrible relationship, having somebody around who makes you feel safe and comfortable can hit a little differently, especially when you're not used to being treated gently, and especially like a man who like actually like listens and takes in like what you're saying, and you don't just see them like as being friend zoned, if that makes sense. And I remember thinking sometimes, why does this man have to be so funny and so nice? Like, that's so annoying. Especially because I had a boyfriend at the time. Like, it was just annoying to me. And I didn't need another man entertaining my life, okay? Because I'm not a cheater. I don't do that over here. And I had already had enough problems. But of course, you know, the universe doesn't care what you need. Sometimes. All right, I'm not gonna knock it too much. Now, we actually did go out together a couple times. Before y'all start typing, no, it was not cheating. Relax. Those were not dates, at least not officially. One of the times was actually connected to work. The other time was like more casual, but there was still that underlying feeling of, okay, why do we actually enjoy hanging out with each other this much? Because when you like somebody, sometimes you don't need anything dramatic to happen. It's the little things, the jokes, the eye contact, the way they remember little details, the way they show up when you're having a bad day. And that's basically what was happening. Nothing happened, but something was happening, if you catch my drift. Now, honestly, I was conflicted because I wasn't trying to cheat on my boyfriend, even though he was a terrible piece of shit. And I wasn't trying to start some secret office romance. But at the same time, I was starting to realize something. I actually liked being around this man more than my boyfriend. And that was scary because sometimes meeting somebody who treats you well while you're in a bad relationship makes you realize just how bad your relationship actually is. You start thinking, wait, why does talking to this person feel easier than talking to the person I'm actually dating? And that's when you know something is seriously wrong. Some of you already know how this went down. Eventually, I broke up with the ex-boyfriend. We're not gonna go into detail here. If you wanna know what happened, check out the other episodes. And honestly, I was so relieved. I was finally free from all this chaos. And I remember thinking, okay, now I can actually focus on myself. And maybe, just maybe, small chance, I could see, you know, what's going on with this thing. What's going on with this thing with my manager. Except there was one tiny micro issue. He was gone. Now, I'm not talking about he switched stores. I'm not talking about he went on vacation. This man suddenly quit, and apparently everybody was surprised, including the owner. Nobody really expected it. He was just gone. And I remember being like, wait, what? Because now I'm finally single. How does just happen? What? I'm finally in a position where I could actually explore whether there was something there. And this man decided to disappear from the face of the earth. So naturally, I tried to find him. Instagram, gone. I couldn't find him. Line, nothing. I tried to reach out, nothing. Apparently, I was blocked. And the what if, you know, I'm not gonna lie, I was disappointed because I genuinely liked him, and I think that's what made it so weird. I mean, don't get me wrong, I wasn't bawling my eyes out and devastated because I lost the love of my life. I didn't know this man well enough to say that, but I couldn't help wondering, what if? What if I had been single when I met him? What if I never gotten into that relationship? What if he hadn't quit? What if we actually gone on a real date? What if we had given that chemistry a chance? Maybe we would have dated, maybe we would have lasted 6 months, maybe we would have just stayed friends. Who knows? And you know, honestly, knowing my luck, we probably would have dated and I would have made an entire YouTube video complaining about him 6 months later. But because that's apparently my brand, right? But I'll never know. You know, because this man really said, let me develop chemistry with this woman, support her through her worst relationship of her life, give her rides home, hang out with her, and then disappear. Sir, what was the reason? What was the reason? But you know, looking back, I think the reason I remember him so much isn't necessarily because I think we were supposed to be together. It's because he came into my life at a very specific time. I was dealing with somebody who made me feel miserable. And here was this person who was kind to me. He made me laugh. He made me feel comfortable. He made work fun. And sometimes that's enough to leave an impression on you. You don't necessarily fall in love with somebody. Sometimes you just meet someone who reminds you of what it feels like to actually enjoy being around another person. So that's the story of the Bunny Bar manager I almost dated. Almost. Because technically we never dated, we never kissed, we never had some crazy secret affair. We just had chemistry. And then he disappeared. And honestly, that's probably why I still think about that situation every once in a while. Because the stories that stick with you aren't always the ones where something actually happened. Sometimes it's the ones where something could have happened. And to this day, you know, like, I mean, I'm in a relationship now. The only reason why I thought of this man is because of this fucking channel, right? But, you know, I'm not gonna cap and say that, like, I don't wonder what would have happened if I met that man at a different time in my life. Maybe nothing, maybe everything, but apparently I'll never find out. Because somebody needs to explain to me why Japanese men have a habit of disappearing when the plot gets interesting. Anyways, if you're watching this, Mystery Bunny Bar Manager, I hope you're doing well. And I hope you know you were actually a pretty cool guy. You don't know who the fuck this is. All right, YouTube, that is it for today's video. And I will see you in the next one. All right, bye.